I know in the beginning, some of the times I'd roll by somebody and they would purposely slow their vehicle down to the same speed I was at, and they'd give you a thumbs up, which I thought was, was kind of cool.
I think back on just the raw days of hard work when people would almost laugh and say, hadn't that been tried before?
It seems like just yesterday we were gathered around a small table and we were talking about the industry over drinks or coffee, and we could all fit in one small room. Farmers were very intrigued about the idea of finding a non-food industrial use for soybean oil surpluses.
In the very beginning days of biodiesel in the industry in the United States, it really was just driven by the grassroots efforts of soybean growers.
I first thought about using soybean oil as fuel when I was serving as a Nebraska soybean farmer on the Nebraska Soybean Checkoff Board.
Ken Johannes came to us actually in 1990 and was asking if we'd be willing to put together a demonstration at the time to show that you could use an alternative fuel, something different than diesel fuel, in a diesel engine.
We sat down and looked, and he developed a project where University of Missouri would buy a pickup.
At the time, it was a struggle for them. They were kind of questioning, are we doing the right thing?
And he submitted this to the Checkoff Board for a vote.
Coming in a direction that really is going to make a difference for the soybean producers in the state.
Well, they passed it. Well, the vote was 4-3. So 4 members of a 13-member board set the mandate that here we go with this new fuel. Let's try it at the University of Missouri and see what we can do. Well, we needed some soy diesel for our first project, and Bill Ayers, University of Missouri graduate, stepped up to the plate, and he made that first batch in a 35-gallon trash can.
We began renting tractors from Case IH or John Deere, whoever would allow us to put that soy diesel stuff they didn't know so much about into the tractor.
The first time I did it, I thought, well, here's a 40-year-old tractor and I'm dumping some fuel in it. I'm hoping for the best. And I drove down the road about a half a mile. The smoke plume cleared up completely, just like that. It was just absolutely a revelation.
They asked me to put together a program and go out and talk to the United Soybean Board, the American Soybean Association, and other state checkoff boards and see what we could do to get biodiesel developed in the United States. The first year staff of the National Soy Diesel Development Board was Lola Helming and me.
We went out and bought all used furniture for this office because our budget was very tight. And we did buy one new piece of equipment, which was a fax machine.
Every time you called down there, she was the voice of National Biodiesel Board.
This was the first time this has ever been attempted in the United States or elsewhere where we actually set up a trade association before an industry existed.
And we were visiting with the folks at DOE, and of course they were asking us questions like, what's the value of it? And then, of course, then they began asking questions like, well, you're driving it down the road. What's it do to the emissions profile?
At the end of 1996 and going into 1997, a research priority of the board became health effects testing of biodiesel.
And we began taking engines to first Toronto, then some to Southwest Research Institute, because these two corporate entities are the kinds of folks that DOE looks at emissions numbers and says, so these are real numbers.
And at the completion of a couple of years of testing and more than a couple of $1 million, it served as an incentive for biodiesel producers of the fuel to join our board and become members in order to join in the health effects certification so that they did not have to do the individual testing each themselves.
It was an exciting new industry. We could see things were developing. The government was interested. Academia picked it up. The checkoff picked it up. We just had the one missing component, the industry.
AGP opened the first dedicated biodiesel plant in 1996 in Sergeant Bluff, Iowa. Our first customers were primarily in the agricultural market.
First biodiesel plant I got to go to was AGP's plant, and it was early days. It was one of the few in the country at the time. And I really didn't know what to expect, little pipes and tanks and everything, but it was so contained and so neat and clean in there. It was very exciting to see it for the first time. I can remember very distinctly saying to the folks in the room, the leadership, if you don't change the name to biodiesel, you're never going to get anywhere. No one says soy diesel but you, and the rest of the world is saying biodiesel.
I was very much in the soy-only camp. I thought other feedstocks were interesting, but really couldn't play much of a role.
Despite the fact that the soybean farmers, through the checkoff, had provided the bulk of the funding, it always seemed like a natural that we should incorporate other feedstocks into biodiesel production.
Because there was no use in us going to Capitol Hill with a divided message and a divided lobby.
Only way we're going to do it is to broaden the coalition and bring more feedstocks in, that was a strength instead of a weakness.
National Soy Diesel Development Board farmers determined that they needed expanded support, so they voted with some controversy to change the name to the National Biodiesel Board.
Fulcrum for NBB has been Joe Job and his staff. That is where all the pressure comes from, be it regulatory, be it legislative, or be it commercial. And they have to balance all those interests against each other and come to a conclusion that everyone can get behind.
There's so many different things you chase down, and at a university setting you say, is this really going to do something? And in the beginning I felt that this really had a chance, and so when we were at a point where we could actually make this come together, and it seemed like it was a great fit, and it was fun. There's things about every opportunity like this, you say to yourself, would I do that again? I'd say yeah.